The heavy mahogany table in the estate lawyer's office was covered in financial ledgers. My Aunt Linda was already reaching for the paperwork to claim the $300,000 liquid cash account, while my Uncle Robert was arguing over the title to a vintage Mercedes. They had spent the last 2 hours methodically stripping my grandmother's $800,000 estate down to the studs. When they finally got to the bottom of the list, Linda looked at me, smiled a cold, thin smile, and pointed to a line item for a rusted 500-pound iron safe sitting in the basement. "You get the scrap metal," she said, signing her name to the cash transfer. She had no idea that I wasn't upset. She had no idea that I was the only person in the room who knew exactly what was inside that safe. Welcome back to Carter's Story Vault. If you've ever watched entitled people fight over pennies while you quietly hold the winning ticket, hit that subscribe button, because this reckoning is absolute perfection. Let me take you back 2 years. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a forensic auditor for a major accounting firm. My job is to trace hidden assets, untangle complex corporate structures, and find the money that people try to bury. I spend my days analyzing ledgers and looking for discrepancies. I live a quiet, disciplined life. I wear dark, tailored shirts, keep a strict routine, and I don't care about flashing wealth. My extended family is the exact opposite. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert have spent their entire adult lives living far beyond their means, constantly trying to project an image of extreme wealth. Linda leased cars she couldn't afford. Robert took out massive loans for failed business ventures. For the entire life of my grandmother, Eleanor, was the family bank. Whenever Robert's businesses were going under, he would show up at her house claiming he was going to lose his home, and she would write a check. When Linda wanted to send her kids to private school, she guilt-tripped my grandmother into covering the tuition. They treated her like an ATM, but they never actually spent time with her. For the last 5 years of her life, I was the only one who came over on Sundays. I was the one who fixed her internet, drove her to her doctor's appointments, and sat with her on the porch. I never asked her for a dime, and she never offered. We just drank black tea and talked. 6 months ago, my grandmother's health took a sharp decline. When the doctors told us she only had a few weeks left, Linda and Robert suddenly appeared. They started hovering around the house, eyeing the antique furniture and whispering in the hallway about how much the property would appraise for once she was gone. One Tuesday afternoon, while Linda and Robert were out in the driveway arguing with a contractor about how fast they could flip the house once she was gone, I was sitting by my grandmother's bed. She looked at me, her eyes perfectly clear. She asked me to open her nightstand drawer and hand her a small leather-bound notebook. She flipped to the back page, where a series of 4 numbers was written in faded ink. 14320955. "They think I don't hear them," she whispered, her voice weak but razor-sharp. "They think I'm just a bank account. Let them fight over the cash, but the Mosler safe in the basement, you take it. Don't fight them for anything else. Just take the safe." She didn't tell me what was inside, but she made me memorize the combination, and then she tore the page out of the notebook and made me burn it in the kitchen sink. I kept that 4-digit code repeating in my head for the next 3 months. 14320955. My grandmother passed away in October. By November, Linda and Robert had already bullied their way into controlling the estate division. My grandmother had left a will, but she had structured it very specifically. The house, the cars, and the bank accounts, totaling about $800,000, were to be divided evenly among her children and grandchildren, unless a party explicitly signed away their share. We sat in the lawyer's office on a cold Thursday morning. Linda and Robert immediately took control of the room. They had brought their own accountants. "Let's be realistic," Uncle Robert said, leaning forward in his expensive tailored suit. The cash and the property need to go to us. We have families to support. We have mortgages. David is single. He doesn't need a house. He just needs a token item. I sat back in my leather chair, adjusting my square Ray-Bans. I didn't say a word. Exactly, Aunt Linda chimed in, pulling the asset list toward her. David, you can have the vintage watch collection, and we'll take the primary accounts. That's fair. The lawyer cleared his throat. The will specifically states that David is entitled to an equal share of the liquid assets unless he formally declines it in writing. Linda glared at me. David, you make a great salary. You don't need this money. If you fight us on this, we will tie this estate up in probate court for 5 years. You'll spend $50,000 in legal fees just to get a fraction of it. It was a bluff, but it was a threat. They wanted the $800,000, and they wanted me to walk away with nothing. I looked at the asset list on the table. At the very bottom, listed under miscellaneous chattel, was a single line item. One 1950s Mosler iron safe, locked, contents unknown, location basement. I'll sign away my rights to the house, the cars, and the bank accounts, I said quietly. The room went dead silent. Linda and Robert exchanged a look of pure, undisguised triumph. They couldn't believe I was folding that easily. But, I continued, tapping the bottom of the list, I want the safe in the basement, free and clear, listed as my sole inheritance. Uncle Robert actually laughed out loud. The rusted piece of junk down there? The door is jammed shut. We had a locksmith look at it yesterday. He said it would cost $2,000 just to drill it open, and it's probably empty. You want the scrap metal? Yes, I said. I want the safe. Linda smirked and aggressively pushed the waiver across the table. Fine, sign here. The safe is yours. You have 48 hours to get it out of the house before we list the property. I picked up the pen and signed my name, legally forfeiting $800,000 in exchange for a rusted iron box. If you're watching this and you know the satisfaction of letting arrogant people dig their own graves, let me know in the comments right now. The next morning, I hired a heavy-duty rigging crew. It took 4 men and a reinforced dolly to haul the 500-pound Mosler safe up the basement stairs and loaded it into a moving truck. I had them deliver it directly to my secure, climate-controlled storage unit. When I was finally alone, I walked up to the heavy steel dial. I didn't need a drill. I didn't need a locksmith. I turned the dial. 14, 32, 09, 55. The heavy locking bolts clicked with a deep mechanical thud. I pulled the iron door open. Inside, there was no cash. There was no jewelry. There were 3 thick manila folders. I opened the first one. It contained $2.2 million in municipal bearer bonds. Because they were bearer bonds, they were completely untraceable, tax-free, and legally belonged to whoever physically held them. I opened the second folder. It contained the deed to a massive, highly lucrative commercial warehouse district downtown, a property that generated over $15,000 a month in triple net lease revenue. The deed had already been legally transferred into a holding LLC with my name on it, dated 3 years prior. My grandmother knew exactly who Linda and Robert were. She let them fight over the $800,000 scraps while quietly securing her real $4 million empire for the only person who actually cared about her. I didn't say a word to anyone. I quietly deposited the bonds and took over the commercial leases. 6 months later, the real consequences hit. Linda and Robert quickly burned through their shares of the cash. They tried to flip my grandmother's house, only to discover a massive $150,000 tax lien against the property that they were now legally responsible for paying since they claimed the asset.
When Uncle Robert tried to secure a new business loan to save himself from bankruptcy, he applied to lease space in a downtown commercial district. The property manager forwarded his application to the owner of the building for final approval. He had no idea he was submitting his financial desperation directly to me. I stamped it denied and mailed it back to his house. Let greedy people fight over the shiny things on the surface. When you sit back, stay quiet, and pay attention to what really matters, you'll find that the real wealth is always hidden in the dark.